Hey guys, it's Dr. Tiff, and this is Maximizing Your Mental Game. I am so times when I talk to athletes, they just never have time to sit and really train and educate themselves on the components that really maximize our mental capacity as an athlete, or really any high performance situation, whether it's professionals in an executive scenario where they're going in and giving presentations to large groups, or people that are going into interviews, things that evoke anxiety and require us to really maximize our focus, our attention, to visualize ourselves in those scenarios and allow our mind to be our secret weapon. And right now, when some of our physical training is limited because of gym time, or because of some social distancing or travel restrictions where we can't get to training components, this is such an awesome time to hone in on really looking at how do we maximize mental performance. So I want to take us through that a little bit today. And the things that we're going to cover is first of all, preparation. We spend so much time fine-tuning our warm-ups from a physical standpoint, and we have routine and we have a strategy that we go through, and we have a progression of dynamic warm-ups and ball work, or hitting practice, pitching, time in the bullpen, whatever the case may be. We have to also think about how do we create consistent mental preparation, having a pregame routine that takes us through steps that gets our mind in the right place and gets us in our optimal zone. And we're going to talk about that because our optimal zone is what allows us to get into what's called our flow state. And that's that ease of performance where we kind of feel like time is in slow motion, that runner's high where all of the adrenaline, the endorphins are putting us in that perfect scenario to have a peak performance competition or training, because we want to see that in training too, because if we can see and we can experience that flow even in practice scenarios, then we become more familiar with it and we can replicate it into competition or into the higher intensity scenarios. And then we're also going to talk about work and rest cycles. That's not about physical training, right? Because we love to see interval training in our physical preparation because we know the science behind the benefits of rest and work cycles, tempo training, sprint work for maximizing our output. But we also need to think about that from our mind and how we can break in action and give our mind a break and then regroup and refocus. So we're kind of interval training and oscillating through our mental game too, so that we don't get fatigued and burnt out. Couple examples of flow, and this is what I'm talking about, those situations, those performances where it was just almost miraculous, where it's something you almost don't even remember doing it because you were just so enmeshed in the situation. Brett Favre throwing 399 yards, 4 touchdowns, QB rating of 154.9, almost perfect. This was a 41-7 victory over the Oakland Raiders. And if I recall, this was right after his father passed away, so there was some extra motivation there, but still an amazing, irreplicable performance there. The 4-minute mile, right? Roger Bannister breaks 4 minutes on a mile, 1954. And that is just something that still stands out there, even so many years later, as one of those flow, runner's high, amazing situations where he was just in the zone and there was nothing that was getting in his way. There was no fatigue. He wasn't focusing on his body. He was just rolling with that situation. And then Michael Jordan, of course, he has a million we could have picked out from his career, but 92 NBA championship, Portland Trailblazers, 7 threes, 35 points just in the first half, right? He was just on fire in those situations where you feel like you just can't miss a shot. You just can't miss the target, right? Everything's just falling in your direction. Your movement patterns are perfect. It seems almost effortless. Those are some really good examples of historically what flow state may look like from a statistical standpoint. So what the key is to understand what your optimal zone is, because we each have them and it's different for everyone. And I think this is what really we need to look at, especially in our youth sports scenarios, because we tend to put everyone in the same warm-up pattern physically. Right? We're all doing the same drills, the same exercises, the same level of intensity, whether it's sprint work or we're just passing with partners or we're doing a slow static stretch. But we really need to give athletes the chance to do their own individualized warm-up at some level. And you can have a combination of the two, because there is something to be said for that cohesion and having the group together and in sync before competition in a team sports scenario. But if you look at this, if you look at the bottom of this graph, that's the arousal, right? And arousal meaning the intensity level. Do I need to be pumped up or do I need to be more mellow in terms of my level of arousal pre-competition? And there's some athletes whose optimal zone is very low on the arousal mechanism. So for example, you see athletes laying down on the bench before the game, in the locker room, headphones on, hood pulled over their head. They're just wanting quiet space, personal, just really internalizing that. And they're wanting to be in a little bit more of a low arousal. Then on the other end of that spectrum, you've got the guys that are doing really dynamic, high knees, sprint work, high intensity music, things in a group that are getting them in more of a performance competition type of arousal mechanism. And then you've got middle of the road. So the key is to understand your specific zone and to be able to find strategies pregame that are going to put you in that zone to prepare you most optimally to go into that competition. And it needs to be succinct and it needs to be consistent so that you know exactly how much time you need and the mechanisms you need to utilize to secure that zone and to stay in it. And for some people, you need a little bit of the dynamic, higher intensity work. And then as it gets closer to competition, you want to come down off of that or vice versa. So you might also ebb and flow through that continuum and find your zone. And you may not know. And that's why this time is really awesome, because you can kind of test the waters in practice, in scrimmage scenarios, when the pressure isn't as high, when the outcome isn't as important. Figure out where you do best, prepare in each of those zones before practice, and see how your practice translates and how you feel you do in terms of performing in that scenario. So right here, if you're doing this as a team and watching this, or if you have just time right now to pause this, the thing I'd like you to think about, and if not now, something you can do later, identifying mental distractions. And those are what I call irrelevant cues, because whenever we're in a performance scenario, there's a lot of noise. There's a lot of things going on environmentally, mentally, situationally, that you are having to or trying to decipher and sort through in terms of what's important and what's education and information as you go into that performance scenario that's going to maybe help to maximize your outcome, and what is irrelevant, what is managing or occupying mental capacity that's not really driving you towards higher performance. Something like that might be weather. It might be the refs or the umps or the officials. It might be the crowd. It might be annoying parents on the sideline. Not that saying all parents are annoying. It might be coaches screaming cues from all directions. It might be the other team, your opponent. And which of those are you able to tune out? And which of those do you need to not tune out? For example, if coach is yelling plays from the sideline that are dictating your lineup or dictating your position, you may certainly need to be paying attention to those. Those would fall under relevant cues. But if the other coach is yelling all kinds of different plays and numbers and call signs and cues to his or her team, then certainly that may be irrelevant, but it might be distracting you from your focus and attention. So I want you to identify potential irrelevant cues in your specific performance scenario that you find yourself distracted by. And then I want you to also define some skills and strategies that can help you stay in the zone. What are some things that bring you back to focus, bring you back to the moment, bring you back to present so that you can maintain optimal focus on the situation? So pause here and make a list. Let's say 5 irrelevant cues in a performance scenario, and it may change day to day depending. And then what are some relevant cues and information that you can hone in on that are going to allow you to stay in your zone and achieve optimal outcomes? So we'll pause there and we'll come back. Okay, guys, so we're back, and let's talk about how we create that champion's mindset, that mental stamina that is our currency for higher performance, right? We really have to optimize our energy, optimize our focus. First is identifying, which we did, those relevant and irrelevant cues, and you have to be able to do that in the moment. You have to be able to stand up there. If you're the quarterback, and you've got your offensive line in front of you, and you've got that ball, and you've got the center, those are relevant cues that count. The ball, the positioning of the defense, those are things that are going to dictate your movement patterns and your choices. What's not relevant is all of the different talking and signals coming from the other team and the fans and the movement of the referees. All those things are irrelevant if it's raining or snowing or windy, right? If you're a kicker, those may be relevant, right? The wind is certainly going to be relevant. But for you in that scenario as the quarterback, you need to focus on securing the ball and putting it where you need to put it. Plugging in and refueling. So this is about that interval training we're going to get into. Figuring out and playing to your strengths. We all have strengths and areas of improvement that we need to take through our competition, through our training, through our practice. We need to be able to improve those, certainly, but you also want to focus on the things that you're good at and make the most of those, because in that given scenario, you may not have time to be training something else. You just need to be optimizing what you've already got in your back pocket. And then again, we're going to talk about some of those pre-game routines that are going to help you get in the zone. So first of all, let's talk about that interval training, that ebb and flow. We need to create work and rest cycles through competition, and certain sports are easier for this than others. For example, golf has a lot of time between shots, a lot of walking between holes, where you can have strategic rest cycles, where you can use breathing, meditation, feed yourself physically, literally having a snack, having a playlist of music in some AirPods or earphones, if you're allowed to do that on the course. So certainly golf is one where it's easier to work in some of those rest cycles as compared to, let's say, soccer, where you're on 45 minutes all in. It's not like you can run over to the sideline unless it's a unique scenario and eat something, or stop in the middle of the field and take a break to do some breathing exercises. So those are just some opportunities and options, and you can figure out in your sport, in your specific scenario, which of these might be easiest for you to work in, and also being strategic about how you do that. If it's a halftime, if it's a quarter, if it's between events, if you're a gymnast or a track athlete where you've got some time between, how can you integrate these rest cycles into your training? And that way, when it's time to be on, when you're up to bat, when you're on stage, when you're in the moment of competition or within that quarter or half, then you can really dial it in and refocus. So thinking about, if you try to maintain focus for the completion and the duration of your event, especially something super long like a swim meet or a track meet that may be hours, you cannot try to maintain mental capacity and concentration that whole time. You've got to ebb and flow through that. You just think about that just like you would interval training in your physical space. So this is, again, the reason is we don't want to use up willpower. These don't use conscious energy once they become a routine, right? They go from being a strategy to becoming a routine, which makes them more automatic, right? It's just like as you become more adept at your sport, or adept meaning a professional or an expert at your sport, you don't have to think about some of the little things, right? As a pitcher, initially, you're thinking about every little component of that process, your footwork, your ball, the handling of the ball and the finger positioning, and then eventually all that becomes very automatic. A golfer initially is thinking about the address, their hands, their takeaway, the backswing, and then eventually there may just be one or two things that you've been working on that week to focus on in terms of your fundamentals, because it becomes more routine. So we want to create the same for our mental game, where we're not having to use conscious energy, but we just automatically know how to effectively breathe. We automatically are visualizing. We automatically are creating times to refuel physically our body with the right nutrients, whether it's having our water prepared with some electrolytes or having a snack. And you may have to have somebody handing you a snack at hole 6 or at hole 13, but always just having some consistency there, and it becomes routine. And why? Why do we need to really optimize our mental game when sport is physical in nature? Because we want to learn to be fully present. One of the biggest things that impedes us from optimizing peak performance, achieving peak performance, is being fully present. If we dwell in the past, right? If we're thinking about the last play, if we're thinking about the pass we didn't make, if we're thinking about that last step, that 50-50 ball we missed, those are distracting us from the ball that's now coming at us, and we're potentially going to miss because we're distracted from the past. The other is projecting or thinking about what might happen if this happens. Projecting and trying to predict the future takes us away from the present, and again, potentially creates anxiety. What if I miss this shot? We should always be using internal dialogue that's positive, and I'm going to make this shot when I hit that fairway, when the ball goes through the net. Those are the things that are going to create positive energy. One of my favorite quotes, Henry Ford: whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're most likely right. And all that means is the way you think is typically the outcome you're going to achieve. So if you think you can do it, you have confidence in that shot, if you know you've prepared, if you've been in that situation before, if you've visualized a successful outcome, you're more likely to achieve that. On the flip side, if you continue to doubt and dwell and guilt and worry, those are things that are going to manifest themselves in the performance. It allows you to achieve balance and enhance self-confidence. The more we see ourselves succeeding, the more we visualize that ball going through the net or upper 90 or that last strikeout in a perfect game, those are the things that are going to boost self-confidence and allow us to really find balance between the mental and the physical. It also allows us to connect actively. When we stay in the moment, we can really dial into coaches' feedback and suggestions and comments and communication from our colleagues and or our teammates. And also just allows us to really focus on what we can control. Control the controllables, control the process, and not try to control the outcome. If you look at each fundamental movement, each fundamental play, optimizing your pre-shot routine, and really staying present, then you're going to see those little steps add up to the outcome that you want. And it's not about perfection, it's about progress and process. And if you put those pieces in place, then the outcome being perfection. So just continue to think about each of those little components from a mental standpoint, and not trying to achieve everything today, but start to work towards those things. Again, I want you to pause and try just a little bit of a mindfulness practice. So turn this off, pause it for 5 minutes, and I want you to just find a quiet space. Try to sit without any limbs crossed, arms crossed, legs crossed, feet crossed, and just sit relaxed attentiveness. You don't want to be so relaxed you fall asleep, but just try and visualize a component of your game that you would like to really optimize and be as vivid as you can with it. All the senses, the smells, the feelings, the tastes, the energy, who's there visually, who do you see, who's around you, what kind of uniform are you wearing, all those little things. So right here, pause it again, 5 minutes, and I'll see you back. Okay, guys, think about how that went. I'd love to hear from you. Shoot me an email if you ever want to, and just let me know what questions you have about that mindfulness practice. But that's kind of the gist of this, guys. This is just some takeaways from what we've talked about. And first of all is that mindfulness piece. And mindfulness, if you try to, it's a present focus. You're trying to stay in the moment. And often I have these little power words or power phrases I say to bring you back. It could be now, it could be focus, it could be here, it could be power, anything to kind of bring your mind back if you feel your mind drifting, which it will. And the point is not to stop thinking. It's about just being in control and non-judgmental. That's huge. Non-judgmental about the feedback you're getting, about the feelings, about the thoughts that are coming in. And often I just visualize a big stop sign. If I feel a negative thought coming in, I just throw a stop sign up and literally see that thought crashing into it and just disintegrating. So that's a really good way to find a strategy to stop those negative thoughts, because what we don't want is to have the negative dictate performance. We can see it, we can identify it, but we don't react to it. We are non-judgmental about it and look at it with curiosity and why are those thoughts happening, so that we can start to try to shift them to more positive. Manage what matters. That's the same as controlling the controllables, right? We need to be able to manage what's really relevant and not what's irrelevant, and identify that. Those cues, those controlling and managing the cues that are relevant, and also remembering to be a sprinter. Give your mind breaks just like you give your body breaks in your training and in your competition. Create some rituals. I think a playlist, music specifically, huge. It can really dictate that level of arousal, the type of music, the cadence, the energy, the combination of songs. That's a really easy, tangible way to create some ritual. Meals can be a ritual. What do you eat before? What do you eat the night before, the day of? Those are things that can be consistent and you can feel comfortable and confident in. Find your rhythm, find your zone, stay in it, and play to your strengths. Continue to work on those other areas. There's always growth. There's always more to be learned and other areas to improve on. But when you're in that moment and you're not able to continue training and practicing, you got to hone in on your strengths. So that is what I wanted to give you guys today. And just remember that these are 10 things that don't require any physical talent. Being on time, working hard, giving 100% effort, always carrying yourself positively, and being engaged in body language, eye contact, having high positive energy with your teammates and your coaches, attitude, passion. When you stop loving it, stop doing it. Be coachable. Always accept feedback, understand it, and try to implement the suggestions being given, because your coaches, your parents, your teammates, they all want you to be the best, because you being the best is going to make everybody else great too. So be coachable, do extra, like right now, right? You're watching this, that means you're doing extra and you're going to be prepared. when you go back out there on the field. And just have an awesome week. And if you need anything, my email's right there. I'm here to help you guys. I hope you have a good one and keep working hard. See ya.